Hello and welcome to another episode of the Distil-Nation NZ podcast. My name is Tom, and I'm joined as always by my friend Cameron.
It is a pleasure to be here, and let's just acknowledge the space that we are in.
Yeah, how cool are we? We're in the Juniper Collective in town now. This is cool. We've got a beautiful backdrop of bottles behind us and all around us, so have fun.
It's a great place to come in and try something new, and trying something new is indeed what we're doing today.
Yeah, this goes really well with the shop. I mean, tastings is what we do here a lot, and you though you're the pro, you're the master.
Oh well,
through discovering Drams.
Yes, and it's a great place to start, because one of the reasons that I started running tastings, and what's really funny is that when did I start? 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago. And it was at a time when Scotch was becoming more popular than it had ever been. There were new releases, new distilleries, lots of really awesome stuff happening across Scotland, but most people really only knew of the major big players. And so I was like, okay, there's nobody that's running events that's catering for the new, the less popular, the accessible price point. And so I thought, that's my gap in the market, I'm going for it. And over that period of time, the number of New Zealand whiskey distilleries has just exploded. And at a point in time when I'm like, okay, maybe I'll have one every couple of tastings just because there's not enough out there. And now I'm like, if I can include 2, maybe even 3 every event that I run, man, I'm doing well. It's a good time.
Yeah, and of course, when we met, that was a New Zealand whiskey tasting, like solely.
Yes.
Back in the day. So that was really cool that you were able to run that even 2018, 2019, whatever that was.
It would have been about then.
Yeah, so good to see that, it's still so popular. But I do appreciate coming to your tastings and still seeing, the Scotch ones, and what's out there. Actually, you did a really cool Finnish one.
Yes. Yeah, that's...
And I don't mean the barrel, I mean the actual Finland.
The wood-smoked Finnish rye whiskey.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a great point to put a pause in this conversation to say, you have Herrick Creek.
Yep.
You also have Juniper Collective, but Juniper Collective is expanding to also be Spirit and Spoke.
Yep. So Spirit and Spoke is our new sub-brand here at the boutique, which is encompassing all things New Zealand whiskey, rum, vodka, anything else that's not gin, basically. And that way, this whole boutique can be all New Zealand-made spirits, and we can really bring that all together. And then we can now run tastings here at the boutique that are, either gin, or if you want whiskey, if you want rum, if you want mixed, it's quite cool to be able to sit down and say, here's one of every category maybe, or, there's kind of unlimited options with those tastings. So quick plug, if you do want to do a tasting here at the boutique, head onto our website, junipercollective.co.nz, and you can actually book right on the website. And then you can pick your date, your time. The pricing is all there. It's just a minimum of 5 people, and it's going to be fun times. And we've already got some really cool stuff in the store, like Pocono, the New Zealand Whiskey Collection, 1919's new whiskey, Thompson, of course. So yeah, there's lots more coming. So yeah.
And I think this is, just if you want to keep this in the episode, do, and if not, you can cut it out. That's fine. So you have got Spirit and Spoke here, and you may lean on an experienced presenter to come in and run dedicated dark spirit tastings.
Who could that be? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Who would I lean on for such a task?
Look, if you can find somebody really good, let me know.
Oh, right.
But yes, so if you are wanting dedicated New Zealand tasting events, then they will be happening here, or indeed at other venues around. You'll have the private events that can be booked, but you'll also have public ones going there as well. Yeah.
So, of course, July is going to be our first ever New Zealand whiskey tasting here, which you'll be helping out with.
Indeed.
So this will be a pretty cool spot where you can come hang out with Cameron and I for the night, and we're going to go through 5 New Zealand whiskies. It's going to be really good. Midwinter themed.
Midwinter themed. It's going to be robust, flavorful, warming, everything that you want. So that's happening. I've still got Discovering Drams, my own creative outlet. I am proudly a champion for New Zealand whiskey and New Zealand spirits. But, as you've said, I am still going to have a look to see what's happening in the world of Scotch. They make whiskey in other countries outside of New Zealand.
I didn't know that.
Did you know that?
No, I thought it was New Zealand only.
I mean, I really hope it works out well for them. Yeah. But so I will still be looking offshores for all of those fun-filled whiskies.
Yep.
So if you are wanting to know what's new in New Zealand and overseas, Discovering Drams. If you want to know about what's happening in the world of New Zealand spirits in general and dedicated New Zealand gin, whiskey, rum, liqueur,
anything, vodka.
Tasting events, Spirit and Spoke, and of course for everything you'll hear all about it right on Distil-Nation NZ.
Woo! So what are we talking about today?
There's the plug. There's the plug. Okay, normally we would have one spirit and we would talk about that distillery and we would kind of do that, but actually let's do a tasting.
Yeah.
I got into spirits when I found out that a bunch of my work colleagues were also into whiskey. And again, this is kind of like right at the peak of when whiskey is starting to become popular.
Okay, yeah.
And so we were like, okay, well, let's have a whiskey night. And we went round to one of my co-workers' houses, and then I had a couple of bottles, she had a couple of bottles, they had a couple of bottles, and we all put them on the table. And it was an opportunity to go like, oh, I've never tried that one. I'd really like to try it, do a bit of a swap.
Yeah.
Those nights are great, and they're a great way to figure out, just like any tasting event, it's a great way to figure out, okay, what do I like, what don't I like, what's something that I might have written off but I should give another go. But what we weren't doing was actually doing like a dedicated kind of tasting lineup.
Right.
So if you want to get together with your friends and actually put your own whiskey tasting or gin tasting or spirits tasting together, that's what we're going to be doing.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Right, let's start with the gin. We've got 3 there. For starters, what 3 have we got? And then from your point of view, where would you start in organising your lineup?
All right, well, the first one we've got here is the Pico gin. This is from Clark Lane Distillery in Hamilton. And I don't know much about this gin, so I think that what we'll do is we'll definitely pour these out and we're going to have a taste of them. The second one we've also got is the Shearwater gin from Mount Fife up in Kaikoura. Justine's a one-man band out of her garage there on the farm. You might have seen her on Country Calendar.
Country Calendar's great for showcasing.
I was on Air New Zealand flight a while back, and they had all the seasons of Country Calendar, and I just spent the whole flight binge watching Country Calendar. It was great. So bugger the movies when you're on there. Watch Country Calendar. And finally, I've got a 1919 classic gin, which if you don't know 1919, they're one of the OG distilleries really here, craft distilleries in New Zealand, and they do some beautiful, beautiful stuff, including now rum, whiskey, and a huge variety of gins. And the Kiwiana series is quite neat. Yeah. Okay, so bearing in mind, I have never had any of these gins before, and I don't know all that much about them. If you were looking at your lineup, where would you start arranging them? How would you start figuring out which order you're going to taste them in? So I think everybody might have a different way of doing this, but you'll probably have a proper way. But I would first off start with just checking what type of gin they are, right? So in this case, these are all very classic London Dry styles, so we don't need to do too much there. But then I would check the ABV. That would be my next guess. So we've got 40, 41, and 42. So I might start with the lowest and then think about working my way up to the biggest. That's not a huge difference though in ABV. So
No, it's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing like if one was an outlier at 46, then that would definitely be because if you start with the higher ABV. Now I know you know this. I'm just explaining.
That's what we're here for.
if you start with the higher ABV, it's normally that first sip of alcohol, and especially a stronger spirit, that is the wake up for your senses, and it goes, oh, hello, we're doing a tasting. And so if you come in hot and strong, sometimes it can singe your taste buds a wee bit.
Yep.
So you want to start in low, start in gentle, and work your way up to anything stronger.
Yep. Now I'm just having a quick smell of the three while you're explaining that, and oh wow, that pico is different. So actually, if I was to go just based off of smell right away, I'd probably arrange this from. I think I would start 1919. I go Mount 5, and then I would go Pico.
Okay, so it's just in reverse.
In reverse order, and now that's just based on the smell, based on the category as well. I think the 1919 is the most representative of a traditional London Dry style gin. The Mount 5 is it's got some unique characters to it, but it's still, identifiable as a London Dry. And then this Pico gin, it's got this really unique smell to it, which is a gin, but it's almost white dog single malt smell to it as well.
Yes, that art of the heart of the start of the
from the whiskey, New Zealand Whiskey Collection, So that's why I would arrange them in that order, and I think that would take you from here's the category, here's a good representation, here's branching out a bit, and here's branching out a bit further into something unique.
Based on, now it's funny, I have sometimes arranged spirits based on smell alone, and then I taste, and then there might be a more lingering flavour or something. Most of the time when I'm arranging by nose, that will be the lineup that I stick with, but certainly there have been times where I've had a taste of something and gone, oh, no, I've got to
it's a big change,
switch these around. I do want to take a moment to talk about the glasses that we have. These ones are called Copita glasses, but if you have a Glencairn glass, that's another one. I lent some whiskey samples to a cousin of mine, and she was wanting to get more into whiskey, and she was drinking them out of a tall tumbler, so like a tall one, and she said, it's too much, and I said, actually, if you've got a small white wine glass in your cupboard, that would be better than going for the whiskey tumbler. And all of a sudden she said, night and day, what a difference. So the glass you use does make a difference. So these ones here, ideal for tasting because they're small and they are wider at the bottom than they are at the top. So it means you can put your nose in. If you're using a tumbler, which is so straight sides, the vapors are escaping everywhere. It makes it very difficult to actually get a good read on those flavors. Whereas a smaller one like this, wider at the base, allows you to get a good spin, coat the inside of the glass, and then narrower at the top, it concentrates those aromas and those flavors so that you can put your nose in and actually focus a bit more on what you are doing. So the glass absolutely matters.
That's great, and you don't need to get too fancy with these. I think you can buy these quite easily at like Briscoe's for a couple bucks sometimes. You know? And they might just be called a wine sample glass as well, or like a wine tasting glass. I think they're just smaller than your regular wine glasses. So that's I remember when I got into whiskey for the first time, this is what I bought, and I remember I think it was Briscoe's, and I spent a long time using one of these glasses to learn all about whiskey while I was getting into it.
Because there are some, Glencairn glass aside, which are also fairly available, price point not too out there, but there are definitely some other whiskey glass makers where they've got double wall insulation and bells and whistles coming out the wazoo that I don't really think you need.
No.
And the other ones that say that, oh, well, you've got to have crystal, or you've got to have... Again, if you want to spend that money, it's your money.
Again,
Go for it.
like it's your preference. At the end of the day, if you feel better drinking out of a certain glass, fantastic.
But you don't need that if you are going to get started.
You don't need anything fancy to get started. So, I've just gone through while you're explaining that and had a quick taste, and I do still stand by my initial tasting lineup. I think I would go 1919, Mount Fife, and then Pico. I think. That would be quite an interesting tasting. That Pico one is a lot more unique than I was expecting it to be. And I'd like to know a bit more about it.
That Mount Fife one, that nose is really quite earthy.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all fairly... they're all coming out of that one category.
So, the Mount Fife one does have seaweed in it, which would be the big outlier for the botanical. This is the shearwater one. I believe there's another one that is even more ocean forward from her, but
I don't get ocean on the nose.
No,
and again, whether you've planted that thought in my head, but having that sip. Bit of salt spray in there, a bit of umami. Maybe I'm thinking sushi.
Yeah.
I'm
a big fan of that Mount Fife one for sure. That's to me is a good blend between the category and going a little bit out there. To me, that sort of is more interesting than just a regular. But then again, a lot of people with gin, this is going to be something that they might want to say like, okay, great, I'll have a sip of this, but then I'm going to add tonic, or a mixer.
Oh, yes.
So like with the gin tastings, I know we do here, but like that's something we would do. We'd put a tonic on the table that we would pair with it, and then we'd say, have a sniff, just a touch on the tongue, because a lot of gin drinkers, might not be into drinking these straight.
No.
But just have a touch so you can kind of see what you can get out of it, and then add a little bit of your mixer and see where it goes from there. So,
I had some friends over the other night, and I brought out a bottle of your Manuka smoked, your Moose Lake smoked.
Lovely.
And again, dear friend, and I gave a small pour to her in a shot glass, and said, have a nose, have a sip, and she made a face because, as she said, look, I don't drink spirits neat. I just don't. And I can pick up some flavours, but this really isn't for me. Mm-hmm. We then, seeing as, she did say that she liked it, then poured it for her with tonic as she normally would. One, she said that she absolutely did love it. Two, I noticed that the Manuka was actually elevated by the tonic going in.
Yeah.
And it all of a sudden became this really bold player where, it's not quiet before, but it just heightened it. So, if you're, another point, if you're adding water, that can change things. And sometimes I've found that I'll add a wee bit of water, or I will let the glasses sit for 15, 20 minutes and then come back. We're doing a speed version here.
Totally.
But that can also change the lineup. I'm going to agree with your lineup 100%, starting with that 1919, ending with the Pico. They're all excellent examples of their category. They're all offering something different, telling a bit of a story. Hell, you can put as much or as little thought into it as you would, but to go the other way around, where you've got something that is so, or even the Mount Fife, if you were to start with the Mount Fife and then end with the 1919, where you've got such earthy, salty, out there kind of flavours, to then go into something which is more typical of a dry style, classic dry style, it just wouldn't make sense for the palate, going from something out there to something a bit more safe. Is that a good word?
Totally. And I think starting off your tastings with something representative of the category, like widely representative, is probably a good way to start the evening. This is what we're here for. Now check out what else it can do. And actually, I was just thinking while you were saying that, I might even consider swapping the Pico and the Shearwater just because the pico is out there, but bringing it back to the shearwater at the end would almost like, say like bringing it back to this really, nice, there's the London Dry, but then you've got these unique characters to it. I don't know. Yeah, you could go either way, I think.
I think if we were not constrained by the time of the podcast, and we were playing around with adding tonic or adding water, I think that would make the difference for me.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Maybe it would switch it around, inform the decision making there, but otherwise, what you've done there with that category is great.
Also, I just wanted to make a note. You're saying adding water, and we're talking just drips. Usually
yes.
like just 2 or 3 drips. If you want, if it's a really high proof sort of thing, it's over 50%, maybe 4 or 5 drips. But then the other problem is ice sometimes, and some people think, great, I'll put 1 cube of ice in there, and that's gonna just help a little bit. But actually, there's a bit of science with the ice. You got to put more ice in. You want to almost fill your glass with ice. Because if you put 1 ice cube in, it's going to melt really quickly. You're going to super dilute it. And whereas if you put in a lot of ice, it doesn't dilute it as quickly, and it does change the temperature though. But yeah, so there's a difference there. If you really want to dilute it, chuck 1 ice cube in. If you just want to like see what it's like a little bit colder, lots of ice. It won't dilute it as quickly. It'll just change the temperature of it.
Yes. Yeah. Fair point, because the colder temperatures, and this works for any spirits, wine, beer, whatever. If you're drinking it really cold, you are not going to pick up as much in the way of aroma and flavour. So I was at with you at the last Dram Fest, and the Kavalan stand, they were giving away these giant ice molds. Just smaller than my fist. And so I've got a big tumbler and this big ice sphere just about touches the side of that. And so by the time I put that in there, and then 40, 50 mil of whatever whiskey I'm drinking, if I'm making an old fashioned, it's a perfect glass for an old fashioned, where you're not nosing or tasting. But yes, it turns a tasting and sipping experience just into an enjoyable, not thinking about it too much kind of experience. You can do whatever you like, just knowing that, okay, if I do this is the impact that it's going to have. I'm not going into a tasting session, putting a bottle into the freezer, and then
wondering why you can't taste anything out of it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I actually got one of those sphere ice things from Maker's Mark at the prior Dram Fest, and I love it. They take up a bit of room in the freezer, but gosh,
it's got a time and a place.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have it for the day.
Okay, so let's move on to our next one. Bearing in mind, for any concerned citizens, you'll notice that we haven't actually finished everything in our glass. And I know we're opening up 6 bottles here, but just bear with us. You've got some clean ones over there.
So the first one we've got is the New Zealand Whisky Collection South Island Single Malt, which, of course, is the New Zealand Whisky Collection's first push into their own juice. So like, this isn't the old Wilson stock anymore. This is whiskey they've made under their stewardship, and it's being finally released. So they've got that one, as well as the double cask is the other one, which has a wine finish as well. The second one is Pocono Origin, a lovely, we've talked about Pocono before on the podcast. This is a really good representation of single malt. And then finally, we've got Cardrona's new release, their full-size bottle, 700 mils of the Falcon, their single malt whiskey from down in Otago. And this one comes in at a whopping 52%.
So straight away, compared to the South Island single malt, which is 40%, and then the Pocono Origin, which is 43%, I mean, straight away, I'm moving the Falcon to the end. Just based on strength alone. Now, I'm not one to say that you would judge a whiskey on the colour alone, but I'm looking at the South Island single malt, and the origin. I know that the origin is ex-bourbon barrels,
Yep.
whereas the South Island single malt, American oak,
Ex-bourbon as well, I believe.
ex-bourbon as well. And
However,
yet-
I believe these might be smaller casks. I think that's the difference.
There we go. So I would first be looking for whiskey. I would first be looking at the strength. I would then be looking at what barrels it has gone into, because I would probably be putting an ex-bourbon or American oak cask before a whiskey that had been matured in a more flavorful type of barrel, like a port or a sherry or a red wine or something along those lines.
Absolutely. I can tell you right away, I would go Pocono, New Zealand Whisky Collection, the Falcon.
That's just based off of the nose, or you haven't even...
That's based off of, first of all, proof, second of all, smell, and basically those two, actually.
Yeah.
Because Pocono, again, like I was saying with the gin, Pocono is a really good example of the category, and it's a really approachable whiskey. Somebody brand new to whiskey could really put this up to their nose and think, wow, that's different. I actually can smell something in there, That's quite sweet and buttery and toasty, and I can enjoy that. And then as you move up to the New Zealand Whisky Collections whiskey, you start to move into a bit more oakiness. You can definitely smell that oak. It's a bit darker of a flavor for me. Almost like pushing those almost rum-ish flavors. Sweeter, burnt, sugared.
Now, maybe here's a great point for you to clarify a bit more on that. So, okay, we've got Origin and the South Island single malt. They've both been aged in ex-bourbon.
Yeah.
Now, you made the comment earlier about the barrel size as to why the Origin is a significantly lighter colour than the New Zealand Whisky Company.
Of course. So, the larger cask, like within, let's say, let's take a small cask and a large cask with the same juice in it and age it for 3 years, right? At the end of 3 years, the stuff in the large cask is going to be much lighter colored. You're going to have less extraction from the oak. And that's just due to the wood to liquid ratio. As you get into the smaller casks, you get a much bigger wood interaction with all of the spirit. So you're going to get clearly a darker spirit right away. You're going to get more interaction with the oak. Doesn't necessarily mean one's better than the other, right? Like, because a bigger cask is also going to give you maybe potentially better oxidization.
There we go.
Oh gosh. And the small cask, might go too tannic. You never know. Like there's pros and cons to both of them. However, with the small cask, you're typically going to pull out more of those spicier, woodier flavors within the same amount of time.
Now, I want to get to Pocono. We've got to do a Distil-Nation drive-through at some point.
Definitely.
But thinking of the climate further up the North Island, and Matt Johns talks about choosing this region because it's subtropical, versus distilling in Dunedin and maturing in Oamaru, a further south from here coastal town. Climate is going to have a major impact. I would hazard a suggestion that smaller casks in a subtropical environment are going to mature far, far quicker, ending up with those really kind of burnt, tannic kind of flavours that you're talking about. A larger barrel in a colder coastal climate isn't going to have the same kind of interaction, and you're looking for this tastes quite raw and quite young, so I'm going to presume on the behalf of both of them that they've made these decisions about barrels based on climate, where they're making it, the kind of spirit that they're wanting to create.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a reason why Scotch whisky takes at least 10 years usually to mature, and it's because Scotland is so cold. So when you've got these huge barrels, there's not a lot of interaction going on from season to season. So it takes a lot longer. Whereas, if you take that same large barrel of whiskey and you put it somewhere warmer and you get a lot more fluctuation in temperature, it's that warm weather that pushes the whiskey into the oak, and it's the cold weather that's going to push it out. So if you have a huge fluctuation in temperature, you get a lot more interaction with the oak. And I think Matt did a good job choosing Pocono as a good region for that, doing exactly that. I'm
100% going to agree with you on this lineup. On first glance, putting something that's 43 above something that's 40, people might question that, but actually it doesn't make that much of a difference flavour-wise, accessibility-wise, starting with the Pocono, and actually flavour-wise, the three of them aren't wildly different.
No, they're really
There's
not.
no curveballs in terms of a port or a sherry kind of maturation. They're all, if you'll just confirm for me on the Cadrona, that's also ex-bourbon for the Falcon.
Oh, it's not. So this
not?
This is a mix of 3 barrels. They had an ex-Oloroso, an ex-bourbon, and an ex-Pinot Noir. And they're all from different years as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is actually a married batch. Married 8th of March 2024, bottled 9th of March. Yeah, so it's 3 barrels.
I might need some water in this.
It does need some water. I found that too when I was exploring it. It's 52% is still actually quite hefty for it. It does need a touch of water.
The fruitier flavours are underneath that initial big hit of vanilla cream kind of. Yeah, I think that one would absolutely benefit from some water and opening it up there.
Yeah.
But on our speed run, there's not. I stand by my original statements that they aren't wildly different examples of a category.
Yeah.
They are all. Yeah, they're all doing what they say that they're setting out to do. It's not like we're throwing in. I went to a drop-in Drams session at Whisky Galore, and they had one that was matured in a white port cask, which really, and I mean that stood out. It was really funky kind of flavours. These ones aren't doing anything particularly funky or wild or out there. Classic examples of the category. Which I think for both of these lineups has made it really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's, I mean, again.
It doesn't matter, right? You can go whatever you want.
If I was running my own event, I'm putting together the lineup for my own event, I would take a whole lot longer to decide the lineup than what we have done.
Yeah.
But that has been our speed run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is the sort of stuff you can get from discovering Drams tastings here in Christchurch. They're really fun. I never really went to a whiskey tasting before his, and I love them now. Everybody chats to each other. You don't need to know anybody even. There's a lot of people who just come on their own to these things, and you just get to know people. And you've got regulars, you've got new people. It's good fun. And then same here at the boutique. We're going to do some different ones as well, and mix and match and have a grand old time with it. So they're good fun. They're just
that's just
there's always food. There's good chats and
there's good food, especially and I do want to do a shout out for Smoke and Barrel.
Yes,
their catering is next level. Big shout out to them. But yes, I mean I have been to some events organised by others that have taken themselves a bit too seriously, that have been a bit too on the academic side, that at times have felt a little bit like a lecture. And
you want time to stop in between and enjoy it and chat to the person next to you. Or maybe, it's just, you need to have time to pause, right? You don't want to just go from one to one to one and then you're done. In 15 minutes.
Was that one particular one that we won't talk about that we went to, that we were kind of like, there was no. The presenter did not allow us to actually stop and turn to each other and go, "Oh, hey, what did you think of that one? Do you like that one?" And just kind of letting the room breathe. He talked solidly for a. Look, some people are into that kind of intellectualism, and that's great. But that's not my style. That's not how I run things.
No, I want it to be casual and fun,
Yes.
and you get time to enjoy and chat and explore, Like within those, let's say you leave it for 15 minutes, in between a chat. Like there's time for you in there to let it sit, have a smell, talk to the person next to you. You've had a taste of this one now. Maybe in a few minutes you've added some water to it, you're going to let it sit. There's a lot of stuff you can do within that time to actually change the whiskey in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
All the way that you can add your ice cube at the end. There's all sorts you can do. So it does take more than a couple of minutes to get through them. So just relax. Don't feel pressured if you're running one that you need to get through it. I've made this mistake too. Like, I just get into it and I'm just, oh geez, like there's a quiet in the room. I better start talking. Whoops, I hit the mic. I better start talking and oh geez, just let it sit.
And nobody was bored. Everybody was chatting or contemplative. And frequently there are people that they'll try number 1, number 2, and then in the pause between 2 and 3. They'll go back and they'll try number 1 and they'll go, oh
yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Now that my taste buds and my palate has woken up a wee bit, I'm picking up something in the first one that I didn't. So there's another a trap for new players, shall we say. Don't feel like you have to finish your first sample before moving on to the next one there.
Yep.
If you love it, go for it. But, sometimes it can be fun to play around and you get to number 3 and then you come back to number 1. Having tried that one now brings out something in this one.
That's something I've definitely learned over time. I always keep some in each glass so I can keep going back to them. And at the end, sometimes even I just put them all into one glass and see what's the blend of this tasting,
Oh, so good.
Yeah, and it always turns into something unique. And I've been able to try them all, and yeah, so have fun with it.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to get in touch with us, how do they get in touch?
So we're on all the social medias. We've got Instagram and Facebook at Distil-Nation NZ. We've got our email address, which is distilnationnz@gmail.com. Thanks to everybody who's been emailing us on there, as well as our website, distilnation.nz. You can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube. If you want to see what we're doing, you can go on YouTube. That's a great way to see what's going on. And please make sure you give us a follow, give us a review on your podcast spot. Right, if it's Spotify, give us a 5 stars, please. And Apple, same thing, give us a 5 stars. That's the sort of stuff that pushes them out to other people, and we can keep growing this category of New Zealand spirits.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I asked is because we have had some correspondence.
Oh yes.
Friend of the show. I've always wanted to say friend of the show. There's just something
it's
about
finally
that.
happened.
But friend of the show, Vaughan from Good Bones.
Oh, good old Vaughan, yeah.
I can absolutely. Friend of the show. He messaged in to say he had been feeling a wee bit unwell.
Yeah.
And had been doing some recovery time. And he said that he had been binging, and there was a backlog, so he was sitting there, and in his recovery, he had then watched a couple of episodes of ours back to back.
Oh.
So, Vaughan, I hope you get well.
Yep.
But equally, hearing that just still kind of...
That's pretty cool.
I feel funny about it because people actually...
Actually, and I'll say,
Listen.
I've been setting up the shop here and taking over, and I've reached out to obviously a lot of producers in that time, and some, every so often one will say, hey, I listen to the podcast, I'm a really big fan. And I'm like, oh, great, we had Sarah from Dancing Sands was one of them, I think Lisa from Alls, and I'm sure there were others as well. So it's really cool to hear that people are actually listening in. So cheers, guys.
In our conversation here with Ashley, and she was saying how when she first launched Juniper Collective, that she spent time reaching out to people saying, hey, I'm starting a gin boutique, this is what I want to do, can I stock your stuff? And then it reached a tipping point where she was no longer going out to people because people were coming to her. Hey, we're new, and we know that if we want to get out there and seen by people, that this is where we come. And that has happened. We've had a couple of people reach out to us. Not going to name them here because we're still locking in dates and things, but they've come out to us to say, hey, would love to have a chat on the podcast. How do we set this up? And we're like, oh, yeah, ask us.
Yeah, we're very excited, yeah. Bring some samples, we're keen.
But one of those, and again, it was right after we had our chat with Ashley, and she said, hey, there's an event on tonight. Do you want to go? I can't make it.
Oh, yeah.
And so we went along to the launch of the trade launch in Christchurch of Bluff Gin.
Yep.
We're walking in there. We're met at the door by Chris and Blair, who recognised us.
Immediately. we were out there taking a picture of the bottle and stuff.
And they came out and they were like, boys. And then, not only that, but Chris comes up and he's like, hey, if you're doing a sustainability episode part 2, you've got to talk about us because we're one of 2 distilleries in the world that are using saltwater extraction for cooling. And he's explaining all of this, and he's excited and passionate.
Yep.
Which absolutely, they're doing something cool down there. But it wasn't a token, we listen. Which, hey, look, I'll take, honestly. But the fact that he was talking about the sustainability episode, hey, talk about how we're taking water from the Fovo Strait, which is pretty bloody cold.
Yeah.
And then they're using that in their cooling process. And he was telling us all, and they had their book with all of the diagrams of what they're doing.
It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, he was invested, and he had definitely listened to it.
He definitely listened. It is incredibly humbling.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly humbled. So just to say thank you so much for listening, because again, we would probably still be doing this if nobody listened and it was just us, because it's a great chance to pause, have a catch up between the two of us.
Have our own little tasting.
The fact that you are joining us is incredibly humbling, and I want to say thank you because it means the world.
He's going to cry.
Promised myself I wouldn't.
No, thank you, everybody. It means the world, as he says. So, yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for all your support with all our different ventures, and keep on listening. And if you've got questions and comments, please let us know. If you have an idea for an episode that you want to hear something about, let us know. If there's a brand you want to talk to, let us know. But I'm excited for who we've got lined up coming up. There's lots of stuff. So, yeah, cheers.
Cheers.